Just two announcements before. Please fill out comment cards at the Mass Youth booth and be entered to win a $100 Visa gift card. And drawing will take place during the final session on Monday night in the embassy. And the second announcement is the Poetry Slam will be taking place Sunday night. If you're interested in participating, visit the Mass Youth booth for more information, inshallah. All right, our first speaker for tonight, inshallah, is Omar Atiyah. Omar Atiyah is a Chicago native, is an avid community activist, and an inspirational youth leader. He has several years of first-hand grassroots experience from his leadership role with Mass Youth and founding several community and youth development organizations such as Bridge, a local Indianapolis nonprofit which had the mission to inspire and elevate ourselves and our communities to the highest of aspirations. Omar is a Purdue University alum and now lives in southern Indiana with his lovely wife Jasmine and beautiful children Abdullah, Ammar, and Jannah. With no further ado, Omar Atiyah.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. I greet you with the ancient greeting of peace that the angels greet the human family with. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. I was talking to someone in the bazaar today, and I was asking about a young man who I knew when I lived in Cincinnati about 10 years ago. And the young man, when I lived in Cincinnati, was part of a community circle, which is called Halakha in Arabic, and we used to study things, and after a little bit, he stopped coming. And he started just having a little bit of trouble at school, getting in fights and things like that. And when I asked his mother about him today, it turns out that he's suffering from alcoholism. He's dropped out of school, and he's actually no longer able to work because he has too many incarcerations to his name. So he's basically living at home with his family. I also had a friend in high school who was very intelligent when we were in school. She did really well in class. She used to be one of the people that people would ask to study with, and people would ask her answers to different questions on tests, like we would when we wanted to know if we got the right answer. And 2 years after we graduated high school, and none of us knew this about her, but she had a very abusive home when we were in high school. And 2 years after we graduated, I found out through a group of friends that she worked at a strip club, and that's how she found a career, was to be able to make money. That was the only way she knew. So I'm telling you these two stories because this is the session towards a renaissance. Believe, act, and engage. And as I was reading the description myself, I started thinking to myself, everyone who's going to come is going to expect me to talk about the renaissance of Muslims or the renaissance of Islam. Reawakening the spirit. This is really the discourse we have as Muslims in America and around the world. Reawakening the glory days of Islam, right? And as I was reflecting on our beloved Muhammad, peace and blessings upon him, his message and his mission, I've learned and I found that that's not really what this faith message is about. That this faith message is about the young man I mentioned, whose name I'll say is Jamil, because I don't want to use his real name. His mother might actually be sitting here. The lady, or the young lady whose name was Chantel. This message is about changing the world. But how does that happen? Today, in America, we have, when a person gets incarcerated, if they grow up, for instance, in an area where it's hard to get an honest living, and they're not taught how to get an honest living, the community around them is a community where the ones who make money are the ones who do illegal things, and the ones who don't do illegal things can barely live on food stamps. Then, if they have aspirations, they believe they have to commit crimes. And most of the time, if they don't have someone who can mentor them to a different direction, or they don't have an example in front of them for a different direction, that is their truth. And so what they do is they commit a crime. And then they enter what's called the cycle of recidivism that we have in America. 1 out of every 2 people who make it into the prison system, after they serve their sentence and leave the prison system, will go back within 3 years. 46%. That's 1 out of 2. So if our prison system is supposed to be correctional, it's supposed to stop criminal behavior, actually what it's doing is putting people into a cycle where for the most part, they have very little choice that they know of, because they can't get a job easily. They don't have people who want to train them. It's considered a handout for them to have other chances. And so it's a cycle that they get fed into. Yesterday, while we were making our way to the convention and some of us were listening to some lectures, 2,000 young girls gave birth and became new teen moms in America. Every day, there's 2,000 new teen mothers. 2% of those teen moms will go to college. The children of those teen moms are 5 times more likely to be impoverished as they grow up and to be part of that cycle I just talked about. Today in America, we have 670,000 homeless people. 20,000 of those 670 live in an area in Los Angeles called Skid Row. That's 13 miles from Beverly Hills, the richest neighborhood in America. There's people on Skid Row who were born on Skid Row, and their parents were born on Skid Row, and they'll probably die on Skid Row. So as we come to a convention to talk about the message of our beloved, to talk about the message of God to the human family that was sent time after time, place after place, and then concluded with the beloved prophet, Muhammad, peace and blessings upon him. Concluded with him so that from that point forward, it's not prophets and messengers who have to revive it again. It's young men and young women who say that my job and my nation is to carry this responsibility that God made us all as humans for. And me understanding that I'm going to carry that job means that I understand that my peers are my responsibility. And that when I say, what is my faith? What is reviving my faith? What is a renaissance of my faith? It means a renaissance of my nation. To get closer to what God loves. Because without a doubt, everything I just told you of statistics, God doesn't love. Allah the High and Exalted, when He made the human family, He made the human family honored. And He made us for a job. And He put us on earth to live that job. And so when we talk about a renaissance, before I talk about what believing is, I want to clarify what renaissance I'm talking about. I'm not talking about a mythical glory of something that now has become in our minds as Muslims and in the minds of our peers who are not Muslim has become a culture or an ethnic belonging. That's not what this faith of submission is. That's not what Islam is. Islam is a message to change how we look at the world, to change how we see our own existence and our own being, and to look at all the events and all the things going on around us, to read them right, and to read them to where I know what would be more beloved to God. And then I put it as my life mission that I'll do everything I can to affect the change to make it closer to what God loves. And Islam is also knowing for a fact that I can't do that without a consistent connection with my Creator. And that it starts with my connection with my Creator. Because as I was telling a group of younger people this morning, there was a man named G.K. Chesterton, an author, who was told to write an essay of what's wrong with the world. So he took his pen and paper out, and he spent probably hours or days thinking about this. And then he wrote the essay, and he sent it in. And they opened the letter up, and it said, "Dear sirs, in response to your request for my essay about what's wrong with the world, find it below." And it said, "I am," period. So being a submitter to Allah the High and Exalted is first knowing that I'm what's wrong with the world. I'm how I can have a renaissance of my nation based on the divine guidance of Allah. I am the one who I need to change. And once I'm focused on that, and I understand that, and I connect with Allah High and Exalted in the way that our beloved did, and understand Him and know Him, then I can start believing in my ability to make this renaissance happen. So what is believing? Well, first, and I'm going to mention 5 things that belief needs to be if it's really going to be for a renaissance. First is understanding and believing that the message of God to the human family is a message that's not what Muhammad ﷺ came with only. That it's a timeless message that started when Adam was created, peace upon him, and was sent to earth. And that message is the same message that's good for all times and all places. And the message that Muhammad, peace and blessings upon him, revived and that God perfected during his time is such that it accommodates and changes. In its changes, it's flexible enough to where when a group in a nation like America in the 21st century wants to truly rediscover it, they'll find in it the solutions to every problem. Everything I mentioned, believing that everything I mentioned is solvable through a better discovery of our faith is the first part of belief needed for a renaissance. Knowing that the message of Muhammad ﷺ is timeless and that what's wrong if it's not having the impact, if for 40 years or 50 years Muslims have been in large number in America and that impact is nowhere to be found, if there's a masjid in a community and no one in the community feels the impact of that masjid in terms of changing the societal issues in the community, then what's wrong isn't the message. I believe, when I believe, then I believe that what's wrong is the implementation of that message. And I have to find out what's wrong. And then finding out what's wrong means that I have to change that implementation. Even if it means that I'll be the most unpopular person in the community. Even if it means that I do the most unorthodox things to the existing community calling itself Muslim community in America. Because the rediscovery of what Muhammad, peace and blessings upon him, came with should lead to a vision for America out of every mess that it has. And if it doesn't even start with anything, if that impact isn't felt in even one thing in a community, from a masjid or a center where we would call ourselves the Muslim community center or the Muslim masjid, then that means there's something wrong about what we're doing. And I'll contend to you that without a doubt, what's being implemented today is not what our beloved peace and blessings upon him fully came with. And we have to rediscover what he came with. So that's the first belief. If I believe that what he came with is timeless and can impact change in our nation, if I believe that what he came with will bring people closer to the inner peace that comes with a connection with the Creator, or make people inquire when they want to inquire about how do I get inner peace, they realize that inner peace is found in these people calling themselves submitters to God, then I believe there's something wrong, and that it's not with the message that something is wrong. It's with our implementation. The message is timeless. The message is for America in the 21st century. The message is to address bullying in schools for young kids. The message is to address promiscuity for high schoolers. The message is to address the economic issues that our nation faces and the political issues that our nation faces and all issues that our nation faces. And we haven't discovered it yet. So that's the first belief. The second belief is that this message is a mission. It's not just an individual way of life. It's not just me connecting with Allah and improving and reforming my worship of Him. That's actually the practice for my job. That's actually the on-the-job training. That's the training that I'm doing. So when I go and pray and fast, I'm training for my job. I can't do my job without the training. But my job is reforming this world. And those who connect with Allah truly are the only ones who can truly reform this world. So that prayer and that fasting reforms first my relationship with the one who created the world and summons that He supports me when I try to fulfill my job. But in itself, it's not alone my job. Believing that Islam, submitting to God, means I'm accepting a mission. A mission on behalf of this nation I live in, on behalf of the city I live in. I will be the one who accepts your mission, God, out of the human family living with me, and I'll bring them closer to you. And I will think about what needs to happen to truly address the issues in my city at the root cause. That's the second belief that has to come with believing in the message of Allah. The third is that mission is about addressing the social ills. When Allah High and Exalted, He sent down the message. One of the first surahs sent down was Surah Kuwirat. In Surah Kuwirat, which by the way, the people studying it, if I were to give you an example of who they were, at the time they were people who everybody would be sure is considered powerless of their own power, meaning they can't even make a change in their lives without someone else approving it. In their own personal lives. They're not even free for themselves. They were mainly women who at the time were considered property at the time. Women, they were freed slaves. Some were still slaves. Young men. There were very few who were considered from the echelon of society that could make decisions for people. Which are the older men who had a place in their tribes. Very few in the group that was first with him studying that surah, إِذَا الشَّمْسُ كُوِّرَتْ, were of that group that had power. Yet Allah High and Exalted, He says in the surah, as He's swearing, He says, وَإِذَا الْمَوْءُودَةُ سُئِلَتْ بِأَيِّ ذَنْبٍ قُتِلَتْ. And when the young baby girl will be asked why she was killed. He's telling this to a group of people who can't even control their own lives. He's telling them that this problem, this is a crime, and you are accountable. You, a group who can't even, not only can you not stop all girls from getting buried alive, you can't stop your own daughter from getting buried alive if someone wanted to bury her alive. But it's your job to stop that from happening. That's just one example. But all the early revelation has in it clarity that your job isn't just to connect with Allah and understand that you're going to be held to account for what you do. It's also understanding that your peers and your nation will be held to account. And you being part of that nation, you do everything you can. Even if at the time that group couldn't do much at all, other than believe that it was wrong and want to change it. That is the most they can do. It will be written as if they were the ones who ended it from happening in their city. Because that was the most they could do. So it's just about doing the most they could do. And eventually it stopped and ended because that group was sincere. The fourth is that God alone, Allah High and Exalted alone, owns the result. So the belief that, what's on me is to change the societal ills. if I believe in Allah. But I think about these societal ills, and it's like, as one man said to me one time 4 or 5 years ago, he said, come on, this mission you're talking about is mission impossible. He literally said those words. He's a beloved brother from the status quo. This mission you're talking about is mission impossible. How are we, a small group, a minority, who people are looking at as a cult, or people are looking at as this or that, how are you going to change all these things in America? What you're telling the young people is too much. What you should be telling them instead is how to protect themselves from wrong. I don't know any other way to protect ourselves from wrong than to do whatever is in our power to change what's wrong, no matter how little. Because the fourth element of belief is believing that no matter how little the effort we put in is, no matter how small of a group decides that we're going to do something about it today and comes together right now after this, no matter how small they are and how little they can do, it's Allah who delivers the results. And Allah delivers the results not based on some random equation that He only knows. It's based on the sincerity, consistency, and passion of that small group, no matter how small, and that effort, no matter how little, as long as the group believes without a doubt that it's Allah who owns the results, and balances that equally with working relentlessly as if it's the group's efforts that make the results happen. Again, that fourth belief is believing that balance. That Allah High and Exalted alone, no matter how big efforts are, He alone delivers the results. Allah says about Badr, when 4,000 or 5,000 angels came down, He says, وَمَا جَعَلَهُ اللَّهُ إِلَّا بُشْرَى لَكُمْ وَلِتَطْمَئِنَّ بِهِ الْقُلُوبُ. Allah didn't bring down the 5,000 angels and allowed them to kill people with you that were going to kill you otherwise, because He needs that to deliver the result. He actually sent them down so that you guys feel, oh, okay, we have a larger number, so we'll get the result. But that's just our human thinking. He's the one who delivers the result. And so if the group believes that, without a doubt, that you know what? Allah delivers this result, and we're going to put in our effort, no matter how mission impossible it feels, because it is what's right. Then the belief is that Allah is the one who delivers the result. That element is needed by a group that's going to revive and have a renaissance. And then the fifth is that having all these beliefs, we act. And that's where in the last 3 minutes, I'll transition to the next person to speak, my dear sister, Khalila, right? You're speaking next? Okay. Because the fifth element of belief is believing that all this stuff that I just said, I can believe it. And I can pray about me increasing my belief in it. But if I'm not following that belief and believing that I have to follow it with action, believing that I have to act, not randomly. And as we talk in other times, we can talk about how we have to have a strategic vision for what needs to happen in America now that we're in this place where clearly the masajid, for instance, that I'll contend, and you can tell anybody I contended, I'm willing to have the discussion. I contend that if Quraysh was offered by the Prophet and those with him, peace and blessings upon him, that hey, we want to build masajid like the ones in 21st century America, where they're in the neighborhood knows nothing about what's happening inside. It's not affecting any kind of change to that neighborhood. If they offered that's the Islam we want, Quraysh would have built the masajid for him. Not only would they not have fought him, not only would they have left them alone, they would have helped them. All right, get you the masajid and go inside so that you don't mess with our community. Protect yourselves so that you don't mess with what's wrong in our society. So I have to believe, the fifth element of belief, that I have to act. And I have to trust that with those 5 beliefs, the High and Exalted will empower me to leverage my talents and my passions and my skills in the best way that pleases Him, and I have to continue to look for what's that way. With a group that believes the same thing I believe in, we continue fostering our understanding of our faith. We continue fostering what it should mean for our nation. We continue fostering that the renaissance of Islam, quote unquote, is a renaissance of whatever land I'm accountable for by the divine guidance. That land sees the impact of the faith upon it, so that people come into the faith of God in droves like they did in the Arabian Peninsula. It's not by pamphlets and letters and emails. It's not by, and I'm not downplaying any of the great work done by any organization or any student group or anything. But that's not da'wah, as our beloved came with it. The da'wah our beloved, peace and blessings upon him, came with is that the change is visible, that there's a model, and that people see that's the model I'm looking for. That's home. That's what I've been looking for all my life, as Imam Suhaib mentioned earlier today. He had everything that a young man would want, but he was weeping at night. And there's people who still write songs, who aren't Muslim, write songs about being home at 3 in the morning and feeling the loneliness of the call not coming, even though they just partied with friends and had all the time they wanted to have, because there's no security inside, that I found home. This is home. This is home for all your peers in school and in college. This is home for all your peers at work. This is home. Bring him on home. Not what we've been showing of this faith message, not what currently is visible in America of Islam. That's not home. In fact, that doesn't even feel like home to Muslim young people sometimes. They feel rejected when they go to those environments. No, the home I'm talking about is our beloved, peace and blessings upon him, his message, and that revival that he led, that you can lead, and you're demanded to lead. It's not actually a choice to lead it, inheriting it from him and those that were with him, peace upon him, and may God be pleased with them all. It's actually a requirement for us to rediscover our faith, to line up together, and to strategize how can we then revive this understanding of our faith for our American peers, as Americans who are the responsible ones of this message, the message to the human family that's been lost, and we're the ones who own it. أقول قولي هذا واستغفر الله العظيم لي ولكم سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك أشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت أستغفرك وأتوب إليك.
Jazakallah khairan, Brother Omar Atiyah. Our next speaker, inshallah, is Sister Khalila Sabra. Khalila Sabra was born in Agana, Guam, which is an island near Japan in the South Pacific, and was reared in a Catholic family. Most of her pre-university education was Catholic schools in California. She attended California State University in LA for undergraduate work in education and criminal justice. She continued her graduate work at UCLA in paralegal studies, specializing in the field of litigation. She also completed internships in the Office of Lieutenant Governor of the State of California, in the Office of Congressman Mervyn DeMalley and Congresswoman Yvonne Brathwaite Burke. She serves as the Director of Mass Freedom in the State of North Carolina.
Assalamu alaikum. I was listening to what Omar said, and he was talking about revival. And I was thinking that revival is something that happens every single day that we wake up. We get the opportunity to start over again and overcome our tests. And I was thinking about when I became Muslim and the things that I couldn't see that I think that my parents saw, and I think that's what scared them. I was only 16 and a half, which is about maybe 10 years ago. And, no, I'm lying. And I decided, I saw some Muslims. They told me about Islam. I thought, well, this is interesting. This is good. I went to the masjid, and they said, if you're going to become Muslim, then know that you're going to be tested. Right now is the beginning of your life. So I said, well, I want to talk to my mom about it first. And they said, what if you die before you get home? You won't be able to have that conversation with your mother. Are you really going to ask your mother, can you submit to Allah? So I said, fine. I decided to take my shahada, and then I went home. They gave me a Quran, they gave me a hijab, and I went home. I walked into the house. My mother was cutting some meat. I want to show you just how the tests immediately start and how when people know some things about Islam, how sensitive the issue becomes. Because I think my mother understood something I didn't understand. I thought I was just converting to a religion, but deep down inside, she knew I was converting to a way of life. So she's slicing meat at the sink, and she turns around, and she sees me in this blue scarf. All of a sudden, that knife, that cleaver, came straight in my direction. I started running away as fast as I could. Alhamdulillah, I could outrun her. And she ran behind me. We went outside. We lived on a hill. I ran down the hill, and she gave up, and she just sat down in the street, and she just started crying. After that, they said, you want to be Muslim? You're going to have to pay the price. My other brothers and sisters had always had their tuition paid. When they graduated from high school, they got a car. No tuition, no car. But I said, I'm still going to do what I have to do. So then I was around really, really good Muslims who really nurtured Islam in the people that came there to get their dawah. So from there, I went to Afghanistan, Bosnia, Lebanon. I used to think wherever there's a war, we went there. And each time, those situations, it was a growth, it was a revival, because it meant that a new challenge, I was facing a new challenge, and what I would become depended on my actions in those particular places. So I'm not really going to tell you that you should do these things or how you should live the rest of your life, because hopefully that's too far to see. But I'd just like to give you my 2 cents of wisdom. Ever since your parents, most of you have been born here, I assume, right? Well, your parents came here for a reason. They left their country, and they came here for a better life. And they've invested in this country. But how many of you think that America has invested in Muslims? Has America invested in Muslims? No. But does that mean that we can't turn the situation around? Does it mean that we cannot overcome these challenges and force America to accept who we are and invest in us as American citizens? We haven't until now, but it doesn't mean that we can't, because that's just another challenge. During that time, I thought you had to go somewhere else to fulfill these challenges. That if you really wanted to struggle for Islam, then you went to Afghanistan, you went to Palestine, you went to Lebanon, you went to Bosnia. Only later on in life, I realized that I was ignoring the challenges that were right in front of my face. It was later on I realized that Omar was talking about dawah, that I had neglected the dawah right here. And if I had been neglected, when Muslims came up to me and say, "You interested in Islam?" I would have never known anything. And that was an opportunity that I forgot. So, and then we look at this country and the way that it's progressed, and we talk about challenges. I was thinking that just for one moment, all of you think about a young black man getting into a car. Omar told you his stories, I'm going to tell you mine. A young black man getting into a car and going out to the white suburbs and rural cities outside of Chicago with nothing but a map on the passenger side. He has just been defeated in a congressional election, but there he is driving in areas where white people have never voted for a black candidate before, and he was running for US Senate. He had the guts to step up, and eventually he would be stepping on stage at the Democratic National Convention. Anybody know who I'm talking about? His name is Barack Obama. Now, some people call that a miracle, and it is. He stood up to the challenge. But what about, I'm going to give you an even bigger miracle. Picture a poor young man, no father, no mother, almost homeless. He worked as a child, never received an education. He stayed out of trouble, so people respected him because of his honesty. Even though he had practically nothing, he got married. Despite the difficult life he had before, he had a really good marriage, except one thing, he would disappear for weeks at a time. He'd just disappear all of a sudden. Today, people might describe him as odd. Even though he could not pick up a pen and write out his entire name, still he was bold and inspiring that people considered him a teacher. And the lesson he taught has literally changed the world. The lessons that he taught, today, 1 out of every 4 people follow his teachings. And since 1990, his students have doubled from 1.1 billion to 2.2 billion. Do you know who I'm talking about? Who? Islam. That's right. Both these men sought liberty, and both of these men sought real freedom. Now, freedom is not only a concept, freedom is a lifestyle. Freedom is a process that should go on every day of your life. If you can grasp that, you'll do whatever it takes to make freedom happen in your life and in your communities. But if you don't step up, that's not going to happen. Unfortunately, those of my generation, I don't really feel that we've let our children see our strengths, and maybe we've lived down our expectations, but this is not the end of our journey. No matter how old you are, as long as you're alive, you get the opportunity to renew that journey. What lies behind you and what lies in front of you are small things compared to what Allah has put in you. And Islam is not simply a religion. Like my mother came to understand, Islam is a way of life, but it's something else. Islam is an attitude. How many of you believe that Islam is an attitude? You know, the religion itself, it molds your behavior. It puts you at the forefront of causes. You are defined by your religion. And whether you like it or not, brothers who are sitting over here, when you look over there, this is a symbol of Islam. They don't get to hide. Every time they walk down the street, everyone knows exactly who they are. Now, our problem is we have not really taken up that challenge. How many of you like basketball? Even the ladies, you like basketball? Okay, all right. How many of you have gone to basketball games? Do you ever see the people on the court side? They're there when the ball goes out of the court, and they pick the ball up and they throw it back inside to the big players who are on the court. Do you know who those people are? That's us. We're the ones on the side of the court. The Latinos are in the court because they showed in this election that they got game. Even the gay and lesbian community, doesn't matter whether you accept what they believe in or how they choose their life, they have made a movement where they're respected. And when you discriminate against them, it looks like a violation of civil rights. And they're winning. The laws are starting to favor them. And the Supreme Court will take up the situation about gay marriage. In all likelihood, they will be given the same civil rights as anyone else. And then we look at us and we say, what's going on? Why don't we have a movement? We have these moments. We're at this community, at this convention. We have moments, but we don't have a movement. And that's our fault. So not only do we not have a movement, we haven't even we don't have a strategic coalition that makes the movement move. Not only do we not have a real movement, we haven't even began an honest conversation about how to create one. As a result, we are losing, and America is losing everything that we have to offer it. My greatest wish is that we don't show up at this convention next year having failed to take real action towards having our Muslim voice heard, still having our rights ignored, and our existence in this country left to be negotiated by people that not only hate us, but have not come anywhere closer to understanding what we are really about. A lot of people still don't understand who we are and what we are about. So they're not anywhere near to understanding what we have to offer. And I think most of you will agree that we have, as Muslims, something to offer this society. Do you believe that we have something to offer this society? So when are we going to get up and get our program together and offer the society the things that we know that the Prophet ﷺ gave us 1,400 years ago? If you want to lobby for justice and Islamic rights, then you've got to learn how to lobby. If you want to go into media, go for any opportunity you can get to be heard. The important thing is that we need to find our seat at the table. If you want to play a game, go where the game is played. And when you get there, be ready to announce what needs to be announced, but be ready to denounce what needs to be denounced. We, as Muslims in this country, we are hardly ever guilty of the things we are accused of, but we're also not always innocent. So three things will happen once you get to the door. You'll learn how the game is played, but also how the players act with each other. You'll learn the game's manner, its language, its culture. Second, you'll meet people, because let's face it, it's not who you know, it's who you get to know. Third is the big one, the really big one. When you'll be there, you'll be sitting at the table when lightning strikes, and with us, lightning always strikes. It will strike, and if you're not there to stand up to the issue, someone else will be, and they might not say what you want to hear, and what they do say may not be anywhere near to the truth. If you want something, you've got to open your mouth and ask for it. If 9 people refuse to listen to you, go find 10 more who will listen to you. Don't think that it's always about being a genius or being the smartest of a group or an expert able to solve a problem or being able to seize an opportunity. These things are insufficient without courage, compassion, love for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and empathy for your brother. We are a Jama'at. It's time that we act like it. It's time that we build bridges and build a solid foundation in this country so that we can give the gifts that we have to offer, but at the same time, it's time that they looked at us for who we are, and we should be the receiver of some of the gifts that America has to offer without being prejudged. Jazakallah khair. Assalamu alaikum.
Jazakallahu khairan, Sister Khalila. Our next speaker, inshallah, is Karen Danielson. She came to practice the religion of Islam after an independent reading of the Quran in 1984. At that time, she was attending Faith Baptist Bible College while preparing to become a Christian missionary. Recently, she has received a master's degree in Islamic Studies from the University of Jordan's Institute for the Study of Islam in the Modern World in Amman, Jordan, June 2011. Through the 90s and until 2002, Karen taught Islamic Studies at Universal and Aqsa high schools for various years while working on the development of Islamic Studies high school curriculum. Prior to her move in studies in Amman, Jordan, Karen was Director of Public Education and Outreach for MAS Chicago chapter from 2002 to 2006. She has, this year, 2012, returned as MAS Chicago Outreach Director. Currently, she is also serving in the Oak Lawn Clergy and Religious Workers Association and serves on the Council of Islamic Organizations of Greater Chicago and MAS Foundation Interfaith Committees. Karen was a featured participant and leader in the Ties That Bind documentary of intercultural women's leadership by Artistic Circles, which premiered in 2004 in Barcelona, Spain, at the Pathways to Peace conference arranged by the Council for Parliament of the World Religions and UNESCO. Karen is a wife and a mother of 5 and resides in Chicagoland. Please welcome Karen Danielson. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum. You have to make sure I know about time because I speak on tangents and I don't want to go over time. I need to be reminded. Okay, I have a lot to say and I hope I can get it all said. Our speakers that preceded me, Brother Omar and Sister Khalila, said two things that I feel have to be reiterated over and over again in today's talk to remember these things. One of them was a reform for Renaissance. We have to take what we're doing and do it differently so that we can really enter into a Renaissance. And we have to recognize that we have so many moments. We have so many pillars of outstanding activity, achievement, and engagement throughout our community, throughout the 8 million Muslims that reside in the U.S., and possibly it's even more than that. But no matter how great those moments are not connected. So we have pillars of great work coming up all over the country, California, Chicago, New York, D.C., everywhere. But we're not connected. What we have to transition is to bring up all this activity together and to come to a great level of achievement. Being the director of the Mass Outreach Department here in Chicago, I've come to, over the years, develop this phrase, this saying, this motto, if you will. When people are talking to me about a problem here or a problem there, and the Muslims should be doing this and Muslims should be doing that, and that motto is that if you think we have problems, show of hands, do we have problems? Do we have issues? Do we have things that we need to fix? Right? Contribution is the solution. You have to contribute to the community in which you live in such a manner that you're not just doing one piece of activity, but that when you do that activity, you are actually engaged within that community. That means that once you're engaged, people will start to turn to you for the solution of society's problems. We have been tasked with the duty. It's a command, it's a responsibility that Allah has asked us in the Quran and through the messages of the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ. I'm going to read through them really quickly because I want to get through this fast so that I can get to some more important talks, more important parts of my talk. So Allah has tasked us with the duty of being responsible by saying, I have only created jinn and men that they worship me. That's the first thing, that they worship me. The word ibad, worshiping, has to do with service, that you are in the service of God. You are tasked with the mission to serve humanity. Did you think that we had created you in play? Allah asks us in the Quran. Did you think that you were created without a purpose and that you would not be brought back to us for questioning? So you will be asked on the day of judgment, what did you do? And you must be people that are useful to man. Furthermore, Allah has obligated us by saying, thus we have made you an ummah, justly balanced, that you might be witnesses or examples of justice over mankind. And strive in his cause as you ought to strive. Strive as you ought to strive. That means you ought to be modeling the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ. Strive as he strived. He was tasked, you are tasked. He persevered, you must persevere. He had good adab, good character, you must have good character. He had a way through, you have a way through. He has chosen you, Allah. Allah has chosen you, and he has not imposed any difficulties on you.
He has named you Muslims in old times and in this Quran that the messenger may be a witness for you and that you may be a witness then to mankind. Abdullah ibn Omar said that the messenger, peace and blessings be upon him, said you should pass on to others, even if you only know one sentence or one verse or one piece of information. Hudayfa reported by him, in whose hand is my life. Hudayfa reported that the Prophet ﷺ said, by him in whose hand is my life, you must enjoin good and you must forbid evil. These are not things that need to be left to somebody else to do. They need to be done by you. Farewell sermon, the Prophet ﷺ said, the one who is present must convey the message to the one who is not present. That means you too, if you have the knowledge of the message, must convey it to others. You must take a proactive route. You know, the famous hadith that I'm sure everyone in this room has heard and probably can reiterate, that the Prophet said, whosoever among you witnesses an evil, that you would do something. You would do something with your hands. You would take an action and you would change it. And if you were unable to do that, that you would at least talk about it and teach it, and you would say something to show that this was something wrong. And if you're still not able to do that, then at least you would resent that thing in your heart. But surely that is the weakest of the faith. How? How are you supposed to do this then? So Allah told us, indeed, you have in the messenger a beautiful pattern of conduct. Look into the life, look into the seerah, study that seerah, because when you study that, when you study his life and you start to practice it, then you have what it takes to be the one who can, when they engage in society, make good changes. And here's the big thing, and it's sort of how I started out. Allah commands us to what? To do this collectively, to do this together. So it doesn't matter if somebody's doing a great thing there and a great thing over there, and then we have somebody else doing a wonderful thing here. That doesn't matter. And it won't ever matter until we learn how to connect with each other and do it in a collective sense. What is the verse that I'm talking about? Allah says, and let there be from you an ummah which invites to goodness and enjoins right conduct, forbids indecency. For such are the successful. He did not say, let there be a Muslim ummah and somebody from that ummah come out and do something great. He said, let you rise, you be that ummah. And that ummah is what is successful. And the success that Allah is talking about here is the success of the reward of paradise. If you're not part of that, you're not the part that is being successful. That means you're not the part that's going to paradise. That means we have to be united. The Tawheed, the whole concept of the unity of God, has to be translated into our lives so that we work together. There was a great Imam scholar who said, Muhammad Rashid Rida, who said, let us unite on the things that we have in common and the things that we have differences and the arguments we have and the problems that we create for ourselves. Let us just excuse those, because we need to be united on doing good and forbidding evil. We are responsible. We have been commanded to be responsible. We have a purpose. We have been commanded to live with that purpose. We are to worship. We are to lead. We are to inhabit and to civilize. We are to disperse, and we are to serve. We are obligated to invite by way of example. We are obligated to invite by way of example through information, through education, and through participation, through being engaged with society. We know the verse that Allah has said that He has created us, right, from the seed of one, or the existence of one thing, into male and female, and then created us into nations and tribes so that we would know one another. Please tell me, how do we know one another if we do not engage with one another? We are an ummah in the middle path, and we are witnesses and examples for mankind. Carry on with wisdom. Think. Use your intellect. study, carry on with decisiveness. Be assured that this is what Allah is asking of you. Don't excuse yourself. Don't say, I'm not good enough, or I can't, or I don't know how. Even if you know one thing. Persevere with patience and determination. And remember that as we are the examples, there is no compulsion in religion. La ikra fid din. We cannot, by the command of God, convert or force to convert anyone. Neither, by the way, is there complacency in Islam. There is never us versus them. That's their problem. They don't know what they're doing. They don't know how to fix it. Because this entire globe, this entire earth that we live on, is us. We are humanity. We have been tasked and we have been guided and given something special. Interfaith dialogue is important, and this is one way to engage. And you hear a lot of things about interfaith dialogue. I myself have been doing interfaith dialogue for 30 years. Well, nearly 30 years. Turn of this next year will be 30. And I have to tell you that it's not a fix-all. And so when I'm telling you to engage in society, I'm not telling you just to go out and do interfaith dialogue, but that is a good start. That's a good place to go. We have a lot to fix from within, from who we are, okay? I don't know if any of you know who Dr. Amina McLeod is, but she's a scholar in Islamic studies, Islamic world studies, actually. And she quotes, she said, I quickly learned that African Americans were almost entirely absent from dialogue. And we're talking about African American Muslims. So when dialogues are going on across the country in different cities, there's a huge segment, more than a quarter, perhaps a third, and somebody can correct me if I'm wrong, of our society, of our ummah, that is totally absent from this, as if they have no reason. And we're always looking for the right person to do the dialogue. Who's that right person? I'm going to tell you, you're that right person. You're the one that needs to be doing that. You need to raise up to a level of achievement. And you can. I have faith in you. So an issue is that we sometimes are looking for this right interlocutor, this right dialoguer, and we certainly don't find the person who really needs to be at the dialogue, that one who is intolerant or the bigot, but we have to work on those things, and we have to show that those people who do not want to promote relationship development between the Muslim communities, we have to show them something else. Remember, we have to be the example. So even though the Quran is wrought with dialogue and teaches us the talk, we have to learn the walk. We have to really get out in society and show that we're doing something. And engagement must follow on the lines at what we have common concerns for. But there are some things that we just need to make sure get fixed. Now I'm going to move my talk over to a way of us to stop avoiding issues or banning discussions on theology when we do our talk. What I noticed 30 years ago is that it was a lot of debates and arguments, and then it went into sort of this watered down talk about who you are and who we are. And then we started doing activities. And we settled in on just common ground issues. And even those we weren't doing with any really deep foundation. It was a test here, a test there. And what has to happen with us is that we have to learn to take the dialogue into the activity and to take the activity into the dialogue, and vice versa. So we have to get these things together. We can't just do it one without the other. And this is very important because I can go and paint a homeless shelter with my interfaith partners or my other citizenry, the other people in my community, and then we can part. But they didn't understand me. They didn't learn anything about me, really. They just shared in a cleanup job. And so at some point, we have to really try to get in conversation about, why am I motivated to do this? Why should I care? Why am I here? And let others start to think about why you have a really deep concern for society. I fear sometimes that we don't. And if we don't care, that will be noticed and that will be seen. You know, sometimes we've been sold on this, you know, materialism and this high life or this, you know, fast, fun way to live. And we just overstep all of the work that has to be done. So we have to be ready for these talks. You have to know yourself. You have to know your dean. You have to know what you're capable of. You have to discipline yourself. You have to be able to express yourself, not just in word, but in deed. And you also have to be able to listen. You have to be able to listen and go together to your capital to talk about healthcare issues. Who's gone to their state capital? Raise your hand. Is that Illinois? Somebody say a state that's other than Illinois. Great. So we got Wisconsin and Illinois. Springfield's Illinois. Ohio, great. So we have now that's not really a sampling of the whole U.S., but I like to hear that people from different states are actually going to their capital. So there are things that we can do, and we should go together, and we should have conversation as we go together, and we should go together with purpose. We have a lot to do. We have so much to do in order to make real engagement. I'm going to tell you some personal stories, since Omar started a nice track here, and Khalila followed up. About 10 years ago, our town that I'm from, that I'm living in, I've been living here for 20 years, maybe it was a little bit more than that, maybe about 12 years ago, they wanted to build the Chicago Fire soccer stadium. Okay? Cool, soccer. We're all into soccer. Wow, Chicago Fire is going to be in our town. The whole stadium is going to be there. And the brothers in our community may have had all the greatest intentions to serve our community, and they got behind the building of the soccer stadium because of the commerce, because of the wealth, the money that it would bring to our community. I don't know if it's me being born and raised in America, me having seen maybe impoverished neighborhoods, one of the most impoverished neighborhoods that we have in Illinois is in the county of Cook, but is in a district, in a city that has the highest revenue income in the entire state of Illinois. So this town has the most money coming into it per person and per area, but has the most poor people in it. This town is called Rosemont, and it houses stadiums and auditoriums and convention centers, and it's right around the O'Hare Airport. There's so much money coming into that town, but the average person makes less than $25,000 a year. Or, excuse me, the average family income is less than $25,000 a year. That's really impoverished. So when our town wanted to build a stadium and bring Chicago Fire to our town, I got worried. I was worried for the economic value that might end up coming to our town, but what the condition might be for our families. Now, our town is, I'm going to take a stretch here, but we're right close to 50% Muslim. The particular neighborhood I live in is entirely Muslim. So I was worried. Economically, I was worried. But I'm going to tell you what worried me even more. So I went online, I started doing a research. Other cities that had stadiums. And the number one crime in towns across America that are homes of any sports team or stadium. Anybody like to take a venture? What is the number one crime?
Car theft.
He said car theft. No. What? You're getting close. She said public intoxication. Drunk driving, close again. It's underage drinking. My kids will be driving around or going through a town where the number one crime is underage drinking. So I didn't like that. Plus, I also saw something else coming that might not be very good. So I wanted to try to put a cap on liquor licenses in my community, but nobody would support us. In the end, I was told that if I had gotten connected with MAD, who knows what MAD is, right? Mothers Against Drunk Driving, I might have been able to get something done in my town. It's kind of too late. But, and I'm going to tell you what else happened. And this is with a Muslim on the building board of our town. A vote came in, and this is because of the stadium, a vote came in for a business called Polecats. It's a gentleman's club. Now, my town is the home of the Mosque Foundation. It's Bridgeview. We serve about 100 to 120,000 Muslims. We're associated with a town that has possibly the risk of the number one crime being underage drinking, and we have an illicit business where women can lose their lives. And we didn't do anything. Now, that may be your hometown. I'm not saying this just for us, for Muslims. I'm saying it for that woman who goes into work every day at that place. I'm saying it for that teenage boy or girl who can sneak too many beers and then get in a car and drive away, whether they're Muslim or not Muslim. We have to be there, and we have to try to create neighborhoods that promote goodness and righteousness and forbid evil. Now, Illinois is also changing gambling laws. And there's a number of other things going on as well, like healthcare reform. Our governor right now needs to be advised on what healthcare exchanges are going to take. Healthcare is a big issue. It's a big problem. And a lot of people are suffering dramatically and fatally because of healthcare. I attended a protest, and this woman was holding a sign. It was really a rally, because when the Supreme Court passed that the new healthcare reform, the Obamacare, was constitutional, which was a great thing because everybody was thinking it wasn't going to be constitutional. This woman was holding a sign, and she said, her sign said, "I have survived cancer twice, but I don't think I'm going to survive healthcare once." She was in dire need. And so she was ecstatic because it became constitutional, this healthcare package. And we need major reform. And guess what? There is no Muslim voice on healthcare reform in the US. There's no Muslim voice on healthcare reform in Illinois. I don't know about Wisconsin or Ohio or wherever else everybody is from. The laws are going to change Things are going to change, whether you like it or not, whether you have a voice or not. But be part of it so that they don't change without you. Now, find alliances. Find people that you can join with. Find ways that you can actually be part of your society, your community, the state you live in, and engage in ways that your voice is heard, that our voice is heard, and try to do it collectively. Be in touch with people in different states and different chapters of MAS, of ICNA, or of any other organization. We have great organizations. We need to stay the connection with each other, and we need to move along together. And I know that I'm at my last minute, probably. I got like 2 minutes. So I'm going to go through a list of things that we need to think about. We need to organize our monies and our human resources. And how are we going to do that? We have some of the most poorest masajids in Illinois, and we have some of the most wealthiest mosques in Illinois, and budgets, annual budgets are over $1 million. That's a lot of money coming through the doors. If we took 1% of that and put it into a fund on an annual basis, if every mosque did 1% of their annual income and put it into a fund, a national fund, what we need to do is build a hospital. We don't have a hospital. We don't have a university. We have the hope of a university. We have to really build institutions in America that don't only serve us, because it's all we've been doing. We are the most self-serving community I've ever known. We need to start serving the society, and a hospital is the way to do that. Have you ever gone into a nursing home? Nursing homes need reform. Hospitals need reform. Prison work needs reform. Healthcare needs reform. Our political voice needs to be heard on a number of issues. People need to hear what we have to say. And I'm telling you, just as I was when I first read what Islam had to say, when I first read the Quran, it was telling me what I was dying to hear. I wanted to hear this so badly. And I was so scared the moment I read Quran that I literally threw it back down on the coffee table, because I knew that that book, that powerful book, was going to change my life. But I wasn't going to admit it right away. It took a little while. I did a program from our department on Chicago violence called The Interrupters. We need to work on violence in America, violence issues. We all know the